Crime has been something that Dr. Oz ran on big time in Pennsylvania to tighten those numbers when he was getting killed by Fetterman in the polls. We saw it in Michigan, where Tudor Dixon was trying to take aim at Governor Whitmer. We've seen it in state after state where the more sort of reddish candidates have said this Democrat is soft on crime and they are to blame for the numbers. How big a factor do you think that is tonight? And what do you think is happening? I mean, do you think it's the reason Lee Zeldin even had a chance coming into today?
Exactly, right. I think of states like New York, Oregon, not states that you think of as being up for grabs in any way at all, and yet somehow they're in play, right? In New York, you have Republican Lee Zeldin running against incumbent Kathy Hochul, and the entire time he's basically running on crime, and she's saying, I don't know what you're talking about. You'll remember in the debate between the two of them, she said something like, I don't know why you care so much about that. I can't quite think of a clip that would be more out of touch with voters. And then a few days ago in an interview outside of the subway, she was asked about safety riding the subway. And of course, there have been a spate of just unbelievably horrific attacks, often being carried out by people with multiple previous counts. And she said that Zeldin was hyperventilating about crime. Now, all major crimes, with the exception of murder, are up in New York City right now. And you know it's bad when Stephanie Ruhle on MSNBC, this happened a few days ago, was interviewing Kathy Hochul, and she said, we don't feel safe. I don't go on the subway. She talked about going into Rite Aids and CVS's, and this is the case in LA, this is the case in San Francisco, this is the case in parts of New York, and not just having the razors behind lock and key, but having basic necessities like toothbrushes and toothpaste and tampons, because that's how regular shoplifting has gotten in places like New York City. Now, in Oregon, it's a sort of similar story, right? You don't think of Oregon as a place where a pro-life, pro-gun rights candidate for governor would even have a chance, right? And yet Christine Drazan is in a dead heat in the race for governor. And there's a reason for that. We just ran an excellent piece on our Substack Common Sense by Leighton Woodhouse, who went to Portland, not exactly known as a MAGA stronghold, and talked to all of these liberals and Democrats who are saying, basically, I'm voting for her. And the reason I'm voting for her, even though I'm even though I'm pro-choice, even though I'm a lifelong Democrat, even though I'm gay, and she put out an ad to this effect, is simply because the city has become unlivable because of crime, because of homelessness, because of basically drug policies that have allowed for for open use. People talk about the city being in shambles, how they're scared, men and women, to walk alone at night in the streets of Portland. So as much as Democrats wanted to sort of run this election on questions of, democracy being in peril, for people who are living in neighborhoods where, I'm speaking of mine right now, catalytic converters are getting stolen out of people's cars on a regular basis, that just rates higher than things like democracy, an abstract issue, or climate change for people.
Do you think in the way that the last go round, the tape of Abigail Spanberger down in Virginia went viral, it got leaked, of her talking to her Democratic colleagues saying, this defund the police stuff is toxic. We cannot go forward on this messaging. And that was brave because it was, that was 2020 that she said that. Now we're 2 years later. And you still have some of these races being dictated by messaging like that. Mandela Barnes against Ron Johnson in Wisconsin. He's a defund the policer, the Democrat, Mandela. He's a no bail guy. Kathy Hochul has been dealing with the no bail policies here in New York. In New York City, they took away money from the police before they then quietly said, oh, shoot, that was a bad idea. Here it is back again. So I wonder whether, at a minimum, this election is going to put an end to that nonsense once and for all.
I really hope so. I mean, I think the convenient thing, and the thing that we'll surely be hearing on many of the cable stations tonight, is that the Democrats had a messaging problem, or, the spin about disinformation and misinformation and the things that I'm sure are already being said on those networks. But I think it's really simple. This election was about people being totally dissatisfied with the direction of the country, dissatisfied with the economy, dissatisfied with crime, many women dissatisfied with the repeal of Roe v. Wade. But again, that's a real issue. These are real issues that affect actual people's lives. And you could imagine, what would have happened if Democrats in some of these places had said, you're right, taken accountability for things like rising crime, taken accountability for the price of gas, taken accountability for, and we haven't mentioned this yet, COVID lockdowns, right? And learning loss and the kinds of things that parents across this country are just beginning to understand the full ramifications of. Those are the kind of people that want accountability for their life getting worse over the past few years. And that's really what the election's about. And, you know, for the sake of the Democratic Party, I really hope they're able to look in the mirror and see that. Having TikTok videos with, you know, Michigan Governor Gretchen Whitmer talking about people with periods rather than women is not the way to win the election.